So a lot of organisations, I think charities in the UK who do international development work, have a sort of UK HQ, funds are raised, sent to the country, and then there's an in-country team. But I actually found that the best way to engage donors was to take them to see the work. Now, of course, we've been a bit limited over the last 18 months with that, but then there are other technologies with which you can engage people. So in Singapore, Selma, I found it a very innovative place to be. There were one or two donors for that organization, but I went most recently for a different organization of French NGO working in Thailand, and we again it was almost as if Singapore was the hub from which we were fundraising. Rather, I didn't engage in great detail with Singapore nationals in my fundraising, but we were met an organization registered in France. So again, it was more it showed, you know, it was more of a hub, if you like. In terms of fundraising in Asia itself, it is different, certainly, and culturally it's very different. In Thailand, I think the same kinds of things as you might experience in other countries, but perhaps people in Thailand always say, well, if a donor supports something, they will need their picture up, and they will need a flag, and they will need recognition. Well, all donors need some sort of recognition. It's just culturally those things take a number of years to develop. And over 6 years fundraising from Thailand, we ended up with 1 or 2 Thai donors. It takes time, but a lot of international support, because cities like Bangkok, like Singapore, really are very, very international. So that's sort of how it happened to me, as I said, rather than the other way around. And that's brought me to where I am now, working with Chapel in York.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We do have an Asian roundtable happening every month. So it happens at the beginning of the month. So if people are interested in Asian fundraising, then please do feel free to join that as well. So maybe the next question should be, well, you know, we're interested in this clearly because we're here. So then how do we get started with global fundraising? How do we make that first step onto, you know, where do we begin with this? So maybe that's a question for Andrea to begin with.
Sure. I think the important thing is to have a good plan, you know, and you need to stick to your plan. Definitely. I mean, I would say that is 80% preparation, and then 20%, you know, really building the relationships. You need to do a lot of research, know your market, understand how the culture affects the decisions, you know, the decision making of the people that you will go into, you know, relationships, to build those relationships. Just to give you an example, I mean, we closed a gift of £1 million from a Chinese donor in mainland China, from Beijing. But, you know, it took us at least a year or more than a year to cultivate that relationship, to have dinners in Beijing, to share food with these people, to, you know, I had someone in my team that spoke Mandarin as well, that could translate. It's really important to speak the language as well, so you really can connect with the people. Otherwise, it's really difficult. It's the same when we, you know, I was doing fundraising in Mexico. I mean, I know very well the society there, but, you know, it's understanding who are the leaders of, you know, certain groups of philanthropists. You know, how can you get to the billionaires, and who can open the door for you, who can be an ambassador. And then at Q, we had a very, I would say we had an advantage in the sense that our brand is very well known. So that opened doors. Also, our scientists that were working, you know, in all these countries for many, many years, building relationships with other organizations, local organizations, so other scientists in country. And in general, in my experience, at least for Latin America, I would say that donors want to support projects in their countries. So related to your cause, but really benefit their country in some way, especially, you know, those countries in that are, you know, not developed or in the process of getting developed. They are really, really keen to support their own countries. And also, you know, just to give you an example, how you need to understand the dynamics of the society in Mexico. There are different groups led by different billionaires. So if you get support from a group, the other group is not going to support you. So you need to understand all those dynamics, who is who who is leading those groups. And as I said, having ambassadors that could open the door for you. And yeah, I think the main thing is to have a clear plan and stick to your plan, stick to the plan. Really a lot of preparation, and it's all about obviously understanding the culture, building the relationship, and then the people, they need to trust you, both in Asia and in Latin America. For me, was people, they need to trust you, really, to believe in you, to trust you as a person before they're going to invest in the organization. So that's critically, I think, important to understand. Again, also in Asia, it's very important, the levels of hierarchy, who is the director, who is, it's very important who you bring to the table and the discussions, because for them it's really important, to give them a sense of, you are an important person. Who are you bringing? You need to bring the director of your organization. So you need to understand all these, I would say, social things and how culture really impacts or influence their decision making. I will leave it there, but I'm happy to give more detail if you want.
That's great. I mean, Han, have you had a similar experience of having to understand the different cultures and understand different languages, and just kind of understanding a bit more about who you're trying to get donations from? Is that an experience you've had as well?
Definitely. And so I work mainly, not exclusively, but a lot in the US, and slightly different to some others is that we focus on the foundation market a lot. So I just want to echo what Andrea was saying. So preparation is definitely one, and it's all about relationship building. That is very important. And of course, the cultural sensitivity is then one element to definitely take into consideration. A good thing, if you want to find opportunities in the US foundation market compared to the European foundation market, for example, is transparency. So by law, foundations in the US are a lot more transparent than European foundations. So you can prepare relatively easy by just using the right databases, or you can ask me to just make a list of you for funders that are out there. You can find so much information about who is working there, who makes decisions, where do they fund. All of that information is in the public domain, so you can find it. You can then prepare also in your relationship management. It's true what Andrea was saying. It's a lot about trust needs to be built, and that's on personal level. What I've seen is that the dinners and the meetings are very important in that. But it's also a very cost-effective, costly way to build relations. And you can only do it like a few times per year, right? So how often can you have dinner with someone you don't know yet? Maybe twice per year, 3 times per year or so. That's as far as you can go. But in the meanwhile, you also need to stay on the radar, and it's good to plan that ahead already. I think that's also part of what Andrea was saying. With you need to plan, you need to strategize. So your first actions, your first year of contact moments, for example, you can already schedule and you can already plan, bring in a little bit of variety into it. And not always you have to travel to far places. And when you meet them, and that's something I always find hilarious when we take European organizations like the Dutch organization or so to meet with US funders. Often we do then road shows. They meet 20 foundations in a week or so. That's our challenge. They always leave a meeting with a very, very positive feeling, because they hear, oh, what you do is awesome and great, and good work. Send us a 2-pager and we will get back to you. So clients very excited. They think they just got $1 million, and then they don't hear from them again. That's a cultural difference. Has to do with feedback, and the Dutch are quite direct in the feedback. In the US, less direct, but still more direct than, for example, in Asia. So it's good to be aware of it and prepare yourself a bit for the cultural differences before you actually go there. Yeah,
I think that's a really important message. I mean, culturally, definitely to understand, who you're talking to, and from my own experiences working with Americans who are superly friendly and super nice and super, hey, that's really awesome. And then talking to a Dutch kind of counterpart, and who's very direct and very open and very like, well, no, quite frankly, whereas the Americans would never say that. And I think you're right, going to Asia as well, where they're overly polite and they don't want to offend. So I think, understanding culturally, like who you're talking to and how to prepare for that is really important.
And also the wording there is very important. So just an example of an organization that works in development cooperation so a Dutch organization that works in development cooperation. If you go to the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs to ask for funding, they want to see in your funding application the words advocacy as often as possible, and lobby and advocacy. Those are the two key words you can get points for. But if you are an organization that is indeed trying to change things in the world, processes and decision powers and all of that, that's also something that US government finds very interesting, or US foundations. If you use the word lobby and advocacy there, that's a reason for them to not talk to you anymore. It's just, the word exists, but it just has a different feeling. What's so cool about this transparency there is that you can also go into the tax records even of these foundations, and you can see in their wording how they explain the IRS, the tax authorities, on what they funded. So when you actually talk to them, you can use their wording. You tell your story, but you just use the words they use themselves, and you will see that your result is so much higher. And that's what Andrea was also saying, preparation. And it's super simple. It doesn't cost much time, but it's it really makes a difference.
I guess it's getting into the psyche, or getting into the culture of the organization that you're trying to, get donations from, actually understanding how, how they work and the culture, I guess, and as in the internal culture of that organization. So that's, super interesting, really. Selma, have you got a similar kind of thinking behind that? You've got some experience with that?
Yes, of course, I agree with both Han and Andrea. Understanding the culture of each region or country you want to fundraise from is key. For example, I'll give an example about fundraising from the Gulf, for example. One very key thing is you have, for example, if you're meeting with somebody from UAE or from KSA, you have to keep using, you cannot call them by their first name. You have to use, for example, Sheikh or Your Highness or whatever title they have. Some of them, for example, don't shake hands. So also this is something might be offending to some. You need really to, from my own experience, you need to really make some in-depth research about people you are meeting with, especially if you're targeting large gifts. So you cannot go to those people unprepared. And maybe one of the tips that I'm using a lot is that, because we have a lot of our alumni who are working and living in those areas. So we get their advice on about the background, because there should be some info that we cannot find, for example, on the internet, because not everything is there. We can seek their help in for tips for the meeting. What should we do? What don't? So I think culture and going prepared and knowing. And because fundraising should be a win-win situation. So it shouldn't be about what we want from them. It should be also about what they are interested in. Yani if for example, I research somebody and I know he's interested in art, or he's collecting paintings, I cannot go talk to him about philanthropy, for example, for the medical school, because he might not be interested, and I will be losing the opportunity of seeing him again, especially if the meeting, most of those meetings take a long time to be prepared. So, for example, another example of a difficulty that we faced also in Europe with the GDPR, we're not able to contact people now without their consent or send them emails. So we are still working on receiving the consents of those people so that we can contact them again. So all of this might be part of the culture, but we have to be well aware of small details of the country or the area that we are fundraising from.
Okay, super interesting. Dana's got a question. You can ask it yourself, Dana, or I can do it for you. What would you prefer?
It's actually, you have been talking up until now about what I would say more proactive fundraising, you know, to make a plan and to even have your own office or people working for you abroad. I think my interest is a bit on a lower level still, as we experience in the past 1 or 2 years that there is more interest in abroad, actually, to support our work here in Europe. Mainly, just let's focus on the US. And but we don't have people there. We don't have offices there. We just don't have any infrastructure to support this. What would you advise, as a general idea, how to be able to receive funds from the US?
And this is basically starting from the beginning, right? This is starting.
It's very starting from the scratch. So it's not I don't know who of you is most suitable to reply to this, but that would be my question.
I would love to respond. It's the fear that organizations often have is that you need a whole infrastructure, and in the US they call it the 501c3, this charity status that makes you tax deductible, and all of that, or donations to you tax deductible, and that is a costly and expensive and complicated process. You need a board, and you know, it's and before you know it, you create your own competition. Many examples of that. So reality is that is often not needed. And like William was already giving the example, you have like organizations that can serve as an in-between organization. They accept the donation on behalf of you and they wire it to the Netherlands where you are registered, right? So yeah. That exists. King Boudewijn is a famous one. Netherlands America Foundation, Chaplain York.
Chaplain York.
Yeah, does it as well.
We do it, yeah.
That is possible. So that's on the practical point of view. Having an office and having staff there is also not per se an advantage. Just an example from my own company. We started 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago as a company. And our first assignment was to set up a fundraising office for a Dutch NGO in the US. And they have big ambitions. So we got budget to hire 2 staff, budget to hire an office. So we had an office in Washington, DC, opposite of the World Bank, expensive. We set up a 501c3 board and everything. And what we learned there is that our staff in the US was actually, they were busy, but mainly in the preparation phase. So things you could do from the Netherlands as well. But they were there, so they went in the databases that you can also access from here. When did we have donor meetings? When I was there. So I was there 4 or 5 times per year as the director of that US organization. And then we had the meetings. Around that momentum, those were created. In the meanwhile, they were just preparing for the next meeting. But funnily enough, this so in this first year, we did quite a lot of fundraising with the 3 of us, and we raised 20 million for this organization. $0 of those 20 million went through the 501c3. All of that went directly to the entity in the Netherlands because the donors thought that's easier. Why? You know, because every step you take, it costs a few percent. So it's the donors say, well, why should we do that? We trust you. We know there are no tax benefits for us if we use the 501c3. So turnout was not needed. So we invested heavily in it. Was not needed per se.
Yeah, if I just add to that as well, because Chaplain York can help you with that, and this isn't just a promotion for Chaplain York, what kind of is, but we can help setting up, excuse me, a 501c3 if you did want to fundraise in the States, because there are quite a lot of foundations that probably be relevant for what you do, and a lot of them do need the 501c3 status in order for you to apply to them. But as Hans says, there's a lot of preparation that you can do. You don't necessarily need to have people on the ground because, you know, the internet is an amazing thing. You can find out a lot from that, and you can also do a lot of preparation there. But if you are starting from scratch and you did need to have some sort of entity or some sort of office or 501c3 in the States, then that's something that, you know, we could potentially help with. There are avenues to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and often they say on the website or on whatever that they do need a 501c3, but actually the reality is that in many of those cases they don't need. So our advice is always to ask them, why do you want a 501c3? If it's for tax reasons, yes, you have to get a friends of foundation in the US, and that can act as a 501c3 for you. But often it's more about, the what Andrea was also saying, trust, and they don't know you. It's easier for them to give to a US organization, because if you don't deliver, they can go to US courts. If you don't, you accept the money and you just take it, where can they go? That's very difficult for them. But if there's trust, if they know that you will deliver, if they know you conditions are good.
Do I understand it properly that, for example, that if there is a potential donor in the US, either a citizen or an organization or a company interested in sponsoring us as a European organization, that they can actually transfer the money without any specific conditions?
Sure. Yeah,
That's
you can
not a
also
problem.
wire from the Netherlands to the US and vice versa. That's not the problem. If they want it to be tax deductible, for example, then of course, especially the individuals, for example, that category that you mentioned, it's the same as in the Netherlands. If you give to an AMBI, the Dutch version, the 501c3, then it's tax deductible. But if you just give it to a random organization without that status, it's not tax deductible. So that's the same there. But if that happens, you can get this friends off kind of solution, or use a friendly foundation to accept the donation on behalf of you. All of that is possible. Yeah.
And can we build up on our ANBI status in the Netherlands also for the US donors? It's not international, I suppose.
No, it's not.
No,
No,
the ANBI is just for Dutch donors.
Yeah. But what is possible is that there is now we get very technical, but there is also the possibility for a foundation to just check you for one time. That's a very light 501c3 kind of check on you. And there, if you have the AMBI, you can be quite sure that you will pass those criteria. It's not a guarantee. It's not but you probably meet most of the boxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But would you advise, for example, what you say now, that it would be only one time check, but if we see a potential interest of donors in the US to support our work, then it would be, my logics would say, it would be advantageous to have a status which will actually stimulate the donors and even make extra advantages for them in tax deductibility and things like that.
Could be. It's not always like that, but the minimum you promise there, for example, if you have a 501c3 or the lighter version, the friends of version, is that you're extremely committed to enter that market, right? Why otherwise take all the effort to do so? And only just that fact alone shows that you're, trustworthy, and it does help. But it's and in some cases it's even necessary. But in many cases, there are simpler ways around it. Yeah.
I think maybe the first thing is to do like we talked about before, is actually to do the research and to see what the market is going to be for you. So if you think there is opportunity in the States, and you think that there is going to be, donors and people that are interested, be it foundations or individuals or even, corporate givers, or, if there are opportunities there, then yeah, I mean, it would be the next step. It's to have some sort of entity, or not even an entity, but some sort of friends of, or an affiliate with something or somebody in the States. But I think the first thing is to do that before you take that step. I think that's what Han's saying as well, is before you do that step is to work out, is there a market for what I'm trying to do before you commit to doing it? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I would like to add to what Han was saying, that the most important thing to do is to have a clear plan and a clear database. You should have at least a target plan of the people that you're going to approach, because your ultimate target is not one-time gift. It is a continuity. And your target should be, of course, some people would only make a one payment, but our ultimate purpose as a fundraisers as fundraisers is to have that coming yearly or whatever. So it's very important to be able to weigh the capacity of those individuals that you are approaching. And for example, if somebody you should be researching your donors, because for example, you might think that somebody is a multimillionaire and you would be happy to target him, for example, for 10K, and you would be happy about that. But this shouldn't be the role of a seasoned fundraiser. Your role is to maximize on that gift. And having said that, because you're new in the market, I suggest you start by entertaining, and even if you receive small donations from people, but you should start building your portfolio. So that, for example, if over a call somebody just jumped in and give you 10K, so it means there's a potential when you when you engage him more, there's a potential for maybe 1 million or 500K. So actually researching the people that you are approaching, not everybody, they might be like 5% or maybe 10% of the market. Researching them and having a clear target in your head about what do you want to ask them for is very important.
Yeah, I think, Andrea, you've got experience of that, right? Cultivating.
Yes, I just wanted to add to that is that if you decide to enter a market, you need to be committed to the market. It's not that you go one time, you get a donor, and then you disappear. I think it's to show the donors that you're committed, you need to be there at least twice a year, visiting your donors and building those relationships face to face. I mean, obviously we had a very difficult year last year, and everything had to move online, and maybe that will help us to not to do a combination between online and face-to-face meetings. But if you go to a market and you want to build those relationships to get to the major donations, you need to meet the people and develop a relationship with them. So you need to be committed really to be in those markets minimum twice a year. So it's hence what we have been saying about the research, about understanding if there's a real potential for your organization in those markets. If there's no real potential, I would advise not even go there, because the investment is big, and not only about creating an organization there to be tax deductible, but it's more about the commitment, about time. Do you have the time to build those relationships? I think that will be my question. And if you're really committed to that market, you need to give time to build that. And if you go and you disappear, then you cannot build trust like that. They need to see you, that you really care about that region. You really care about being there.
Maybe may I add something?
Yeah, of course.
From my experience as a major donor fundraiser. You really need plan and focus. And I worked for years with the model of moves management, about prospect finding, cultivation, doing the ask, and stewardship. And that whole model was just, the aim was retention, just to keep going with you. But the most important thing you want to know is, what are the needs of your prospects? So what do they want from you? And in my daily business now, as a head of philanthropy at a private bank, I see a lot of philanthropists, and what they really want, or what a lot of them want, is involvement. So are you able to give them involvement? And what does that mean for your organization? They also are looking for combinations between impact investing and donations. And what does that mean for your organization? Is that possible? So that kind of question. So what philanthropists or major donors are looking for, and how can you organize that, or give that, make that part of your offer of your proposition. That's good.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to go back to the whole relationship building, which is, you know, obviously true, and you know, you need to have the relationship, but you know, in lieu of the current situation that we will find ourselves in with COVID and not being able to travel, what are people's experience on continuing the relationships they've got with donors and major givers? Do we think that because people are now more tech savvy and there's more going on with you know, these sort of things on webinars, would we say that it's actually kind of easier to reach people overseas than it has been? Because we touched on it before about not, you know, previously we'd go on an airplane and you'd do, you know, Han would take his people and they go to the States and meet 20 different foundations. But do we think it's easier now, or do we think it's a hindrance not being able to do that? Is it easier to reach people online, or is it better to do it? Obviously, it's better to do it face to face, but I just kind of wanted to put it out there to see what people's experiences was dealing with the kind of the new normal at the moment.
I had a suggestion, just to answer that, Helen, but also just one suggestion related to the previous point as well. I mean, what I've heard from people I've been talking to, someone put it quite well the other day, is that ultimately the face-to-face is irreplaceable as means of building trust. So it's never quite the same, and getting someone face-to-face is until we hear otherwise going to be the norm of ultimately pinning down a donation. But nevertheless, someone said to me, it's been who works in the field we do, it's been a bit of a democratization of access, the pandemic, because where previously someone would have a meeting in the diary and then, okay, put you down for 3 months, and you have to wait and you have to get to the reception and then go up there and get to the top. Actually, now it's much easier and quicker to reach someone more senior in an organization. So in terms of building your strategy, you can factor in that it might not take you 6 months to speak to the director. It might take you 1 or 2, but nevertheless, still, you know, for me, I personally think that you get 90% of the way with the Zoom call, but that last 10% is often the key bit. And I just had one thought for Dana and perhaps other organizations from starting out on the journey of global fundraising. If you're a non-profit, and you presumably in every country there's some sort of board structure, so non-executive board structure, trustees or whatever it may be. One thing we did with the Thailand NGO is we strategically appointed board members in the places that we wanted to fundraise as well. So when we were looking at the US, we had 2 trustees who came on board in the US. They happened to be former volunteers, but that enabled us to get to donors and have the contact points that Andrea mentioned. You'd need to be there at least twice a year. And even if we had to get over from time to time from the UK, if you have a limited budget, you can keep up the contact points through a sort of a network of trust that's within your organization. So the disadvantage of the non-profit world can be not having enough funding. The advantage is you can bring in voluntary support to basically make your organization bigger in order to start that journey.
Yes, good suggestion. Thank you.
Has anybody else got any points about, you know, dealing with the new normal and the face-to-face? Obviously, face-to-face is you know, the ideal, but I don't know anybody else's experience of getting to donors that they need to get to, or interacting, or making the touch points on Zoom, and how that's worked for you guys. Maybe Andrea?
Yeah, sure. I think for us, in a way, was positive what happened, because it really accelerated, you know, for UWC Atlantic, the use of technology. And as I said, we have alumni all over the world, so we could only travel to, you know, different regions. You know, our target regions, Hong Kong, New York, San Francisco, you know, as I said, twice a year. And then we have different, you know, European also alumni. And for us, it was very helpful because we created a series of lectures for alumni to take part on those lectures, so they could give back also time and talent, so they could feel engaged with the organization, and they are proving very, very successful. So we have had an average of 100 people attending each of the sessions. So it's you know, every other week on Thursday we have these lectures, and then alumni are the speakers, and they talk about their experience in different sectors, because we have alumni across all sectors. So that has helped us to bring together the network and feel more connected to the college. So that has been very, very, very positive for us. But at the same time, as I said, I think for getting to the major donations, principal gifts, so I would say 100,000 and plus, you really need to meet people face to face. You really need to connect, and you cannot replace the connection and the building that trust with Zoom calls. I think it's that is still missing for really very large gifts for us. And I'm hoping, you know, we can be we can be traveling and meeting people again soon. Definitely, I think also I'm feeling that people are getting tired of Zoom meetings. They have many of them they're asking us just to have a phone conversation, like the old style for phone conversation where you don't have a screen, you don't see the person, because people are getting tired. So I don't think, my feeling is it's not going to be sustainable to have only Zoom calls with people. We definitely need to meet them and connect with them to build these relationships and get, really, major donations.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think everyone's missing having that opportunity to go and have a coffee with somebody, or just have a chat, or just, shake a hand, or yeah, I think everyone's missing that. Han, you got your hand up, your virtual hand.
Yeah, two things I wanted to say about this is that so in the foundation market, it's slightly different in the sense that they have plans in which they have to spend a certain amount per year, right? So they have to spend it anyway. They're looking for projects to invest in or to grant at least. So there you see like two types of outcomes, I would say, is that you have the more you have the foundations that would normally have a face-to-face meeting. And there, now as a European organization, you have a very big competitive advantage, because it doesn't matter anymore if you have a Zoom meeting from the Netherlands or from France or from Portugal with a foundation in New York, or you are in New York and you also have to have a Zoom meeting. So it's just the flexibility on the time. So maybe you have to work in the evening, but that's it. And for the rest, you're at the same level as an organization that is just maybe even in the same building even. And normally they would meet each other at events and all these places, right? And it's very difficult to get in there. You also see foundations that are technology, for example, is a thing. If you look, I'm always surprised with if I'm in the US, so you see the big fancy innovative ICT things and the very traditional old-fashioned offices with real phones and all of that. That's a problem, because employees are often not being compensated to use their cell phone. So they only have a personal cell phone. So now they work from home often. And now it's very difficult to reach them because they won't share their personal home phone, cell phone also not, because the costs are on them and not on the company. So you pretty much have one option, is just to email them and then ask for a Zoom meeting. And that's not ideal, of course. So sometimes you just want to pick up the phone and call them, and that's sometimes more difficult there.
All really good points. I've just noticed the time. Are there any more questions? Just because we're running a bit short on time. If there are any more questions, we can.
Yes, actually, I would just have one question, and going back to the cultural aspect, do you see even a difference in terms of how people would actually give a donation? Is it towards a project, or towards an operation, or even just towards the entity itself? So is it a cultural thing, whether they would actually like to invest into a project, or again, even just into the organization?
It's a good question. Who wants to take that one?
At least in the Netherlands, is that that if donors start their relationship with a charity, with an NGO, it should be specific. It should be a project, and if you have the trust, they can. There you see, and if you are able to build that relationship, it goes back to better use the money also for your organization, for example, and then it's more or less unlabeled. So that's my comment.
This is what I was saying earlier, that it should be a win-win situation to either the foundation or an individual or whoever it is. So yes, it should be a project that relates to those people, especially if you're asking for a big amount of money. So for example, for a foundation, if you want money from them, it should be aligned with their mission. If it's an individual, because philanthropy is really about people's passion. It's not like any business deal. So the person, the philanthropist, when he wants to donate, it has to be something that is close to his heart, rather than only to his mind. Because, for example, in some cases, now, for example, the target is mainly education and health for some foundations and for some individuals. So you cannot come up with a project that is different and that is of interest to you personally or to the place you work at. It has to be something interesting to the person that you're talking with.
Andrea, have you got anything to add? I can see you nodding.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Salma. It's all about the donor. It has to be donor-led. So hence you need to understand what the donor is looking for.
Yeah, I agree.
So it depends, it's very different if you're applying to a foundation. They have, if it's a formal foundation, they have their process of applying and, very defined rules of what they're looking for and very specific formats. But if it's an individual, it's about building the relationship and getting to know that person. So what could be appealing to that person? What could be appealing from your organization to that person? So, I mean, in a way, we are matchmakers. We're trying to connect our organizations to the interests of these people. So it's very important that you understand what the person is looking for. If you're building a relationship with a potential major donor. Yeah,
it's true. And on that note, I hope that we've, because I do notice the time, I hope that we've fulfilled your interest and what's appealing to you guys too. If you do have any other questions or you want any other help, then please do reach out to us. We will be sending out a questionnaire because it's great to get your feedback on what you thought, what we could do better. We've got another one, another roundtable happening next month on arts and culture and heritage. So if you want to join that, then please do. We'll be sending out information about that. And yeah, the last thing to say is thank you so much to Salma and Han and Andrea for your input and your support and your help. It's been, I hope you will agree that I think it's been super interesting sharing all our thoughts and insights. Yeah, and thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much.